Live from the local station, this is Weather Authority Weekday.
Hey everyone, I'm Meteorologist Mark Collins on this Tuesday. Yesterday we had a pause in the rain. Today it's going to be coming back. We're going to be seeing a pretty typical work week here with afternoon downpours each and every day. The difference compared to yesterday, I mentioned we'll see more rain, but they're going to be real slow movers. And sometimes we get those downpours that come and go, but the ones that pop up, they're not going to move much, so we could see some heavy rain. But kicking off the morning with a bit of a breeze, feels kind of nice out there. Before we hit those 90s coming up later in the afternoon, we'll have those thunderstorms most likely after about 4 o'clock, especially around 6. You can see how things are pretty quiet on the radar screen. We've had some showers back along the Nature Coast, Taylor, Dixie, Levy counties. Those will be the spots that get the rain before lunchtime, and then they'll work their way towards the I-75 corridor after about 1 o'clock. So some morning showers that line up along the Gulf. That typically means they'll be back here along the East Coast later in the afternoon with that southwesterly steering flow. So yes, it's feeling pretty good out there with those temperatures in the mid-80s. Sunshine out there at the beaches. I tell you what, today is a great day for the beach until this evening. You might be chased off the shore with some lightning that we'll talk about here coming up. But as far as those numbers go, I think we'll spend a few hours this afternoon, especially from around 2 through 4 o'clock in those 90s. We'll probably see a daytime high of 93 degrees this afternoon, which is pretty typical for this time of year. A 50 to 60% chance of slow moving, and that equals heavy rains later this afternoon. I'm not expecting much in the way of severe storms, but since there won't be much push to the storms, sometimes they can collapse upon themselves, and as those storms bring down that cold air to the surface, that could bring gusty winds at around 30 or 40 miles per hour. So watch for a few downbursts within those thunderstorms. But in general, today is what you're going to get here for tomorrow. I talked about how storms move slow. That's because we've got this ridge of high pressure stacked pretty much in the low and mid levels, so there won't be much steering flow. And there you see how the green, that's the rain, and notice how the white, the cloud tops, are being blown back to the southwest. The upper level winds are coming in from the northeast, so that's why those clouds have a unique appearance on the satellite. But remember, think of the atmosphere in 3 dimensions. The winds that you feel aren't necessarily as to what's blowing above. And sometimes you can have different varying wind directions with height, shear. When you have very strong shear, you can have severe weather. But at least through half the atmosphere, the winds are light, so I'm not expecting a great deal of severe weather. But let's show you where the rain will be. This is the bird's eye view of your hour-by-hour forecast, taking you through 3 o'clock, and things still pretty quiet. So we're really not going to see the buildup in rain until after that. And the target areas, Clay County, Putnam County, Western Duval, these are all areas adjacent to the St. Johns River that could see some pretty good soakers as we head towards 6 o'clock. So that's really the prime time for some rain around Jacksonville, also in Palatka. And then notice how we'll see those showers flourish into the evening. This is by 10 o'clock tonight. There'll still be some lingering showers before those weekend altogether. And then we're just dealing with a steamy night tonight. This is a different model showing a very similar setup in the location of the rain. So I think most of it staying away from the beaches today. But then on Wednesday, notice how we're going to see more coverage in Georgia and then into northeast Florida. So I think rain chances go up a little bit higher for the middle of the week on Wednesday. And we'll keep about a 60% chance of rain in play for tomorrow. And again, some of those could add up to some heavy rainfall as we head into tomorrow evening. So I'm not seeing any real day that offers up dry weather. I think yesterday was that day where, if you had watched on Friday, I was saying how Monday would probably be the best day for rain-free conditions. This is the zones where we'll see the most likely location for lightning around Tuesday tonight here at 6:30 around Jacksonville. So just watch it. If you're going out for an evening run or jog and you hear the thunder, if it roars, then go indoors, as they say. After about 10 o'clock, things die down here tonight, and then we're looking at pretty quiet weather in the tropics as well. So the tropic tracker doesn't show anything here nearby. We'll back the view out. Just a lot of high clouds there over central Atlantic, and taking a look down in the Caribbean, all is pretty clear. Strong winds down there, low pressure over Venezuela, creating that squeeze of winds, which is very typical for this time of year in through the Caribbean Sea. And then again, not seeing any development, no circulations developing. So I think we're pretty good here through pretty much the rest of July. None of the longer range models are sniffing out any type of tropical development. So that leads us to our own backyards, where we can see 3/4 of an inch of rain. Like I said, that merits some heavy rainfall language when we get 3/4 to an inch out of a good moving thunderstorm. That could cause some localized puddling on the roadways there. And again, back to the National Hurricane Center's forecast for nothing developing anytime soon. We do have a very small lingering swell along our beaches, so if you are going to the shoreline, watch out for just a moderate risk for rip currents. I don't see it going into the high zone anytime soon this week, but we will have those sea breezes each and every afternoon. And then we'll see that kind of nocturnal pulse of higher winds at around 15 knots into your early evening hours. So like I said, we'll bump up rain chances just a notch on Wednesday to 60%, and then about a 50% chance of rain here through the remainder of the work week, and no break in the heat. In fact, if anything, on Friday, it gets even hotter as temperatures roll into the mid-90s. All right, so coming up, I'm sure you've heard the awful headlines of all that flooding in Texas. There were many lives lost. The count continues to go up. At last, over 80 people have lost their lives. So coming up, we're going to talk about the different types of warnings that were issued and how they might impact Florida. What's the difference between a flood advisory, flood warning, and why that river got so high so fast. We'll take a look at the details in the hydrology of that. Hey everyone, we're back. Well, over 4th of July, heavy flooding happened into Texas. Kern County was ground zero for tremendous torrents of water that were flowing down a watershed. A watershed is a catch basin for rain, and usually there's a stream or a river or something at the low spot. And in Texas, there's an area called the Guadalupe River, which is notorious for flash flooding. There you can see a time lapse of that rain. You can see how it's flanked on hills. This is an area of Texas that is quite hilly, and here you can see how the water was rising as all that rain trickled down through the watershed and caused the river to swell over 37 feet. Just imagine when this happens in the middle of the night too. Not everyone getting the warnings, and because it was a holiday, there were campers nestled all along that river. Hundreds of people, very popular vacation spot, camping spot there between Austin and San Antonio, and that river drains down into the Gulf of Mexico. They're still looking for people that have disappeared. Homes were lifted off the foundation. People were in homes as they floated down the river. So very tragic situation. The death count continues to go up. And the warnings went out. In fact, earlier in the day, there was a flood watch for the anticipation of heavy rain. Some of this heavy rain came from the remnants of Tropical Storm Beryl from the weekend prior, but then these thunderstorms used that moisture, and when they developed, the thunderstorms had no place to go. There was no steering flow, and it rained for 24 hours straight, a ball of thunderstorms, a convective complex. And there you see, it looks like what I experienced after Hurricane Helene, all the flooding in my home along the Gulf Coast. But this was surge that was even higher, bigger than Helene. When you think of a river flooding 34 feet well above its banks, that's the type of devastation that resulted. So could something like that happen in Florida? Well, why did that river increase so fast? Well, I drew this piece of paper, and think of this as the watershed. Each edge of the paper is the river bank. When the river is wide, the rain falls and it moves more slowly. But now, what if that was a valley that was steeper like this? Well, that same amount of rainfall in both instances would cause higher flooding in a river that has a higher riverbank, and also not just the width of the river, but the depth, the type of soil that is in that area. In Texas, it's very clay, so when the rain falls, it doesn't soak into the ground, but it quickly runs off into that very narrow shape of the Guadalupe River. Here in Florida, we have Black Creek. That can have a very rapid response to flooding. So when you get a little bit of rain, that river can rise very quickly, in contrast to, say, the Swanee River Valley that has a lower response rate. So dangerous situation there in Texas. Good news is that they're going to see a little less rain over the next couple of days, but any type of rain can cause in that area. So know your warnings. A flood watch means conditions are right for flooding, even though it's not happening. A flood warning is the next step higher. Flooding is occurring, and in this particular case, there was an extra elevated level called a flood emergency, and those are extremely rare. But when there is life-threatening conditions that are imminent or occurring, that's when those flood emergency messages go out. So make sure you have your alert set on your cell phone. Whenever the verbiage catastrophic is entered into a flood warning, that triggers your phone to alert you based on national protocols. All right, I'm meteorologist Mark Collins. Try to stay dry here today. We'll have our own thunderstorms, but they won't cause that type of flooding here, fortunately. We'll see you same time, same place tomorrow.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.